I just want you to know that this year alone, Netflix is wanting to spend $18 billion. You heard that. Not million, 18 billion with a B on production alone. That's already just gross enough for me to hear that they are willing to spend so much money on that. And seeing how much this movie was made for, it just don't feel right. It almost feels like sometimes it's like tax evasion for some of these corporations. So see the amount of money that was put into this and how much they're willing to spend. I mean, it just makes me want to throw up so badly. But then again, hey, one huge talent, they'll get it. The Electric State is directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, otherwise known as the Russo brothers. They are responsible for some of the best MCU or just if not comic book movies of all time in the form of the last two Captain America movies as well as the last two Avengers films. With a screenplay by Christopher Markus and Stephen McFeely, who also helped with those said films. The film stars Millie Bobby Brown, Chris Pratt, Hugh Quan, Jason Alexander, Woody Harrelson, Anthony Mackie, Brian Cox, Jenny Slate, Giancarlo Esposito, and Stanley Tucci. According to IMDb's plot synopsis, an orphan teen hits the road with a mysterious robot to find her long-lost brother, teaming up with a smuggler and his wisecracking sidekick. Okay, the Russo brothers. I don't think a lot of viewers understand how much that this brother duo has had an impact with regards to the comic book genre with regards to both Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Civil War. These are two of my favorite solo MCU films. Mainly the Winter Soldier being just easily my favorite solo MCU project to date. And then, of course, giving us the greatest and biggest comic book movies of all time, which are both Infinity War and Endgame, and culminating 10 years worth of storytelling that Marvel had built up with those movies. And ever since post Endgame, unfortunately, the Russo brothers, they've been struggling so much with regards to trying to find their footing outside of that comic book genre as a whole. Cherry, if you ask me, was just a really abysmal and just downright nasty and gross movie that, while it does have a good concept and has great performances from both Tom Holland and Sierra Bravo, that does not excuse the fact that that movie was so self-indulgent in its messaging to the point of it just made me want to just gag a lot of the times. And then there was The Gray Man, which I will say was a step up over Cherry, but at the same time, I mean, it's just a generic action film that's on Netflix. I mean, compared to the action movies that they have provided in the MCU, that's odd. That's really strange for them. And then, of course, you have this movie, which is based off of a book, which some people might not even know about, because apparently this movie is loosely based on the book, but heavily altered by the Russo brothers. And while it is not on the level of Cherry, I can tell you this much, you guys. This latest film also falls under those issues that I have with their movies as of recently. This is another dud in their film catalog that it shocks me. I'm just left wondering what is going on with them. And even Christopher Markus and Stephen McFeely, who helped contributed the script with The Gray Man and now contributing the script here, I'm just confused. Like what's happening? Walking into this movie, I thought I was going to absolutely hate it or just bias by it because of the critical response. But after watching it, I will say this: it's not on the level that critics were saying of being like the worst thing ever made. Nor would I even say that it may not be good, but it's not the worst movie Netflix has really produced at all. But at the same time, I mean, man, this is just disappointing. This is just sad to me to see a brother duo that helped make some of the best comic book movies ever just make something like this, and you're just like, this is it? What? Though the film has a lot of problems, here are the few positives that I can say that I will not deny I did find myself enjoying. The performances are fine. They're nothing stellar, they're nothing amazing, but they are enjoyable at the very least. Millie Bobby Brown, Chris Pratt, and even I'll throw in Anthony Mackie, who I didn't even know voiced the character of Herman, which is impressive because usually I can usually tell when an actor in this movie who is using their voice, I can easily identify. Anthony Mackie's I couldn't, and he was actually enjoyable in the movie. But really, Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt, the both of them, they're enjoyable, and they at least kept me watching the movie. They were at least watchable, and I wasn't sitting there just being annoyed by them. Now, I will say Chris Pratt is still trying to be like Peter Quill, Star Lord. I mean, hey, I'll take that better than how he was in the Jurassic World movies, so I'll take that. And Millie Bobby Brown, I'll give her credit. She is the main star. It's not like Chris Pratt, first build. She's the first build. So I'm at least happy knowing that she gets the top billing over somebody who could have easily have been the number one billing overall. And I don't think she's really that bad in the movie, and I think they have a good rapport with one another, and they have a good dynamic in the film that it kept me at least mildly going along with it. The music is enjoyable. Composer Alan Silvestri, which although does combine the vibes of Ready Player One and his work in the MCU, because yes, this man is responsible for also making some really amazing scores. Like whenever a Marvel movie opens up, that is his score. It's amazing on how much this man is a genius, especially with the career that he has had prior to the MCU and seeing the amount of talent and work that he puts into his music. It's fun and it's an entertaining score that I didn't mind listening to. And it may not be his best work by any means, but it's okay. Like it's at least enjoyable enough to be like, all right, this is still fine for what it is. It's nothing that's ever going to be any of his other previous works that he has worked on, like Predator or Forrest Gump, or even like I said, the MCU films that he has worked on, but for the most part, it's enjoyable enough to where I don't mind it. The visuals are amazing, the detailing on the robots look good and impressive, minus the obvious green screen usage that you could clearly see throughout this entire movie. Everything else looks stunning, I will not deny. I was impressed by the visual effects. The amount of detailing on the robots, the scratch marks, the dirt, debris that's all over them, how rusted they are. For as much as it is visual effects, I cannot deny they did look pretty damn good, especially for Netflix. That's pretty impressive for them to actually make sure that they threw in the money to make these robots look as detailed as they can look. And I think the concept is interesting. The ideas in this film are cool and actually could work. I really do believe that if this movie had gone the right way, I honestly think this movie could have actually pulled it off pretty well. And I think there is a good premise in this film and the messaging that this movie does provide that could potentially make this to be a very enjoyable, fun adventure film that has a social message that people can really get behind. Unfortunately, that is as far as anything that I can say that was decent, because otherwise, this really feels like an underwhelming and dull science fiction film that you've seen a dozen times. If you've seen Ready Player One, you've seen it. If you've seen E.T., you've seen it. Any sort of science fiction film, even in the past 20 years, that you have seen, or even longer, is in this movie. There is nothing different. Just take elements from those movies, plop them together, string them along. There you go. You got the electric state. Unfortunately, here are the negatives that I have with the film. The story is formulaic. It feels like every science fiction plot in the past 20 years, or like I said, even longer. And it just doesn't have the emotional depth. They really want you to really care about the main character, Michelle, and her brother, and their relationship, and how this story develops. And listen, I get it, but at the same time, with how dull this film kind of goes along in terms of its story, I could care less. It's just boring. The story is just not interesting. How can you not make me care about this sibling duo when you make this story be drawn out and dragged through so much to where I just do not feel emotionally invested with anybody, let alone this story and its social commentary? I feel like sometimes the social commentary is like muddled throughout this entire movie, and when it does, it tries to be all preachy about it, and it's not even in a good way. It just feels like they just are saying it rather than actually being a subtle way of conveying that commentary about prejudice against other people. The direction, unfortunately, is bloated. Directors Joe and Anthony Russo. Listen, I am not trying to throw shade at these guys. I think they are very talented filmmakers. Like I said, I appreciate their work in the MCU. I really, really do. But they try so hard to make this bigger and on a larger scale. And I think that's the problem. The fact that they went super big with this project, I don't think was the right thing to do. Like, I feel like there could have been another director that could have made this either small or medium scale. If not, I would say medium scale. This did not need to be as bloated and as big and as bombastic as it tries to be, because honestly, it just feels like it's a lot of noise. It's a lot of flash, okay? That's all it is. There's nothing really to this movie that screams of quality, but rather, hey, it's a Netflix film. We look at how much money we got. And as much as, like I said, I am impressed with the visuals, at the same time, they're trying to win you over by just how good it looks, rather than the quality of the said product. The pacing and runtime is too long. The film takes a long time to get through its plot, which, for a plot that revolves around getting a sibling back, you would think that this plot would not be as dragged out as it did, but unfortunately, it is. With a runtime of 2 hours and 8 minutes, it's way too long. And usually I am okay with 2 hour films. I really am. I swear to you, I am usually really okay with movies of this nature being 2 hours. But because of how this plot goes about it and how drawn out it is, by this point, I'm like, I want this movie to be over. I want this to be wrapped up and just be done with, because, wow, this is taking far too long to tell this story. The product placement is egregious. People, I have a 3 times limit on product placement. If you hit the third, okay, you're still fine, but if you go anything more than that, I'm not happy, okay? And they kept doing it. They kept adding on more product placements throughout this entire film to show and mention, people, I am here to watch a movie. I'm not here to watch a commercial. That is how much I hate whenever product placement is in a movie, especially if they're going to repeatedly use it so many times. And it annoys me because it is very much clear that they are trying so hard to really get people to either go get those products or to just appease shareholders. It's egregious. It's honestly disgusting at certain points. The writing is bland. Writers Christopher Markus and Stephen McFeely just blends every generic dialogue and jokes that just doesn't land at all. Like, it's almost like their style of writing that was so good in the MCU, when you take it out of it, it just doesn't work. It just feels awkward. It sometimes even just feels cringy. It's almost like they are trying to carry on the MCU in other movies, and it is not working. And maybe it may not work in the MCU anymore, but man, it's falling apart. It just seems like they were struggling to put this movie together in terms of its writing, and they just said, all right, let's just make a generic script as we can, so that way we can just get through this movie as quick as possible, because we got a deadline to meet. The action is boring. Every action scene doesn't feel exciting or thrilling when it happens. Nothing stands out. It's there to be a spectacle. That's all it's there for. There's nothing really like exciting when you watch the action. There's nothing really engaging of what's going on when the action goes down. It's like, okay, couple of shootouts, all right, run away. That's it. That is it, people. That is the extent of the action in this movie. It's not exciting. It's just dull, and it's just kind of sloppy, which is weird because, again, I must reiterate, this duo brought us some of the best MCU movies, 2 of which, the last 2 Captain America movies, had some of the best fight choreography I've ever seen in a comic book movie. It's impressive. It's amazing. It's like on the level of like the Bourne series, alright? That is how good they are with regards to their action. And I watched this, I'm like, man, this makes the Gray Man look like a masterpiece with regards to its action. There's nothing exciting about the action here. What is there to be excited about? None of it. For a movie that has a budget of $320 million, people, I am not joking when I say that. $320 million was spent on this film. That could have gone to smaller movies. That could have gone to multiple Netflix films that could have been worked on, but instead it was all piled up into this one movie. It was a waste. If you ask me, it just was. The Russo brothers just cannot find their footing outside the MCU, and it doesn't really surprise me that they're going back to the MCU and Marvel is like asking them, because both of them are just struggling with where they're trying to find something. So yeah, it's no surprise that they're both kind of reuniting again to recapture the Infinity War and Endgame hype. But unfortunately, with where the MCU is at, who knows? Who knows with them and with the Russo brothers and their future with regards to after Marvel, or they want to continue with Marvel, I mean, they can. I mean, like I said, they've earned that. But as of right now, in terms of their own filmography, this ain't looking good, man. This just is another dud in their filmography as a whole. I'm going to give The Electric State a 4 out of 10. I think this movie's just not good. This truly, really does feel like a streaming film. Now, I'll give this movie credit. It's on Netflix. It's not in the theaters. I'm talking to you, Red One. You're not trying to BS me on trying to make that a theatrical experience, especially when you're trying to push it to get more Amazon subscriptions, as well as making it for IMAX to be on the same level as Oppenheimer. Sorry, but that doesn't mean that this movie gets a pass because you have stars in this. Everyone in this movie deserves better. And I don't know what it was, but this movie just truly could not get me engaged at all. For a movie that was trying to echo something like Ready Player One, it sure missed the mark in that area. So I will be doing my review for Black Bag. So yes, look forward to that review and other reviews coming soon.